Lesson 1. The Power of Perception. The Foundation of Stoic Life. If you wish to be a Stoic, you must first accept a truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The world does not control you. Circumstances do not command you. Other people do not own your peace. What controls you is the meaning you assign to what happens. And until you master this, no philosophy, no success, no wealth will ever give you freedom. From the moment you wake up each day, your mind begins interpreting reality. A sound becomes an annoyance. A delay becomes an insult. A comment becomes a wound. None of these things are inherently harmful. They become harmful only after your mind gives them permission. This is where Stoicism begins, not with changing events, but with examining judgment. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As an emperor, he faced betrayal, war, disease, and death daily, yet his writings reveal a man constantly reminding himself that peace is an internal decision. You have power over your mind, not outside events. This was not optimism. It was discipline. It was survival. Most humans live like prisoners of mental repetition. The past replays endlessly. Words spoken years ago still echo. Mistakes long corrected still punish the present. The future haunts the imagination with scenarios that may never come. In both cases, the mind abandons reality, and when the mind leaves the present, power disappears with it. The Stoic refuses this exile. They understand that the present moment is the only territory they govern. The past is fixed, the future is uncertain, but the now, this breath, this thought, this reaction belongs entirely to you. To lose awareness of this is to live as a servant to illusion. Think carefully about how easily your mind is taken hostage. One insult can ruin an entire day. One criticism can silence confidence. One rejection can reshape identity. If someone tried to chain your body, you would resist without hesitation. Yet when someone disrespects you, you hand them your inner peace willingly. You replay their words. You imagine responses. You allow them to live rent-free inside your thoughts. This is not strength. This is surrender. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed the mind must be guarded like a fortress. Strong walls, selective gates. Not every thought deserves entry. Not every opinion earns attention. Mental strength is not indifference. It is selectivity. It is knowing what deserves your energy and what does not. Perception is not passive. It is an active process. Every time something happens, your mind rushes to label it good, bad, unfair, embarrassing. Stoicism teaches you to interrupt this reflex, to pause, to ask whether the label is true or simply habitual. In that pause, a new freedom appears. When someone insults you, Stoicism asks, is this objectively harmful or only uncomfortable to my ego? When something goes wrong, Stoicism asks, is this truly disastrous or merely inconvenient? By questioning perception, you weaken its emotional grip. This does not mean pretending pain does not exist. Stoics were not naive. They experienced loss, grief, and hardship, but they distinguished pain from suffering. Pain happens. Suffering is prolonged by interpretation. The story you tell yourself determines how long pain stays. A Stoic does not catastrophize. They do not dramatize. They do not exaggerate. They see events clearly, without distortion. This clarity becomes strength. Calm becomes power, and power becomes freedom. Imagine standing in the middle of chaos, noise, pressure, conflict, and yet remaining internally still. Not numb, not detached, but grounded, aware, unmoved. This is not luck. This is trained perception. This is the Stoic advantage. Every challenge becomes neutral until judged. Every obstacle becomes training when seen correctly. Every insult becomes noise when refused meaning. Life does not become easier. You become harder to disturb. This is why Stoicism begins with perception, because until you master how you see the world will always feel overwhelming. Once you master perception, even hardship loses its threat. This lesson alone, fully lived, is enough to change a life. Lesson 2. Rationality and the discipline of control. Once you begin to understand perception, the Stoic path demands something even more difficult. Discipline of control. Not control over the world, not over people, not over outcomes, but control over yourself. This is where Stoicism separates philosophy from mere comfort and turns it into a way of life. Most people suffer not because life is cruel, but because they fight battles they were never meant to win. They argue with the past. They resist the present. They fear the future, and in doing so, they exhaust themselves emotionally and mentally. Marcus Aurelius observed this quiet tragedy and offered a simple, ruthless clarity. Some things are within your control, and some things are not. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. Your thoughts are yours. Your actions are yours. Your intentions are yours. But the opinions of others, the outcomes of your efforts, the passage of time, the behavior of the world, these were never under your command. And yet, this is where most people place their emotional investment. They want approval they cannot guarantee. They demand fairness from an unfair world. They expect certainty from an uncertain future. Stoicism calls this misplaced effort the root of suffering. Rationality is the Stoic weapon against this suffering. Not cold logic, not emotional suppression, but clear reasoning. Rationality teaches you to pause before reacting, to examine before judging, to choose before responding. It asks one fundamental question again and again. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, the Stoic releases it. If the answer is yes, the Stoic acts calmly, deliberately, without complaint. This discipline does not make life smaller. It makes it lighter. When you stop trying to control what cannot be controlled, you recover immense energy. Mental space opens. Clarity returns. You no longer wake up burdened by expectations you cannot fulfill or fears you cannot prevent. You wake up focused on what actually belongs to you, how you will think, how you will act, who you will be. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by chaos. War threatened his empire. Plague ravaged his people. Betrayal came from those closest to him. Yet his writings reveal a man constantly reminding himself not to demand more from reality than it could give. He did not waste strength on anger or despair. He invested it in reason. Stoicism teaches that emotions are not enemies, but they must not be rulers. Anger often arises from the belief that something should not have happened. Fear arises from the belief that something must not happen. Sadness arises from the belief that something should have lasted forever. Rationality challenges these beliefs. It asks whether they are true or merely emotional assumptions. When something goes wrong, the Stoic does not say, "This is unbearable." They say, "This is difficult, but manageable." When plans fail, they do not collapse into frustration. They adjust. When people disappoint them, they do not surrender their peace. They recognize that other people act according to their own nature, not yours. One of the most powerful Stoic teachings comes from Marcus Aurelius's reminder that obstacles are not interruptions to life. They are life. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not motivational optimism. It is rational reframing. If something blocks your path, it is no longer an obstacle. It is the path itself. Through rationality, setbacks become information. Delays become redirection. Resistance becomes training. Nothing is wasted unless you refuse to learn from it. The Stoic mind looks at difficulty and asks not, "Why me?" but, "How do I respond well?" Control, in Stoicism, is deeply misunderstood. It is not about forcing outcomes. It is about governing response. You may work hard and still fail. That is not a loss of control. You may act honorably and still be misunderstood. That is not weakness. The only true failure Stoicism teaches is abandoning reason in favor of impulse. When you allow anger to decide your words, fear to decide your choices, or ego to decide your worth, you surrender control. Rationality is the act of reclaiming it again and again, thought by thought, decision by decision. This practice requires daily attention. The Stoic does not assume mastery. They assume vigilance. They examine their thoughts. They challenge emotional reactions. They ask whether their response aligns with their values. Over time, this creates a powerful inner stability. You stop being shocked by life's unpredictability. You stop being offended by human behavior. You stop being controlled by outcomes, not because you no longer care, but because you care correctly. The Stoic understands that peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of order within the mind. Rationality creates this order. It gives structure to emotion, direction to action, meaning to adversity. As this lesson deepens, something remarkable happens. Life no longer feels like something happening to you. It feels like something happening through you. You become a participant, not a victim, a navigator, not a passenger. This is the discipline of control, quiet, firm, relentless. And once learned, it cannot be taken from you. Lesson 3, emotional detachment and inner serenity. True strength is not loud. It does not announce itself through anger, reaction, or resistance. It exists quietly, beneath the surface, in the mind that has learned how to remain steady while everything else moves. Stoicism teaches that inner serenity is not something you find by changing the world, but something you cultivate by changing how the world is allowed to touch you. Most people live emotionally exposed. Every word, every opinion, every unexpected event reaches directly into their peace. They feel constantly pulled outward, controlled by circumstances they did not choose and cannot command. Stoic philosophy recognizes this condition and offers a radical alternative: emotional detachment, not as coldness, but as clarity. Emotional detachment does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being ruled by what you feel. There is a crucial difference. The Stoic allows emotions to arise, but refuses to surrender judgment to them. Anger may appear, but it is observed rather than obeyed. Fear may surface, but it is examined rather than followed. Sadness may arrive, but it is understood rather than resisted. This quiet observation creates space, and in that space, serenity begins to grow. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are chaotic, your inner world becomes turbulent. If your thoughts are calm and ordered, your inner world reflects that order. Emotional detachment begins at the level of thought by refusing to add unnecessary stories to events. Things happen. People act. Circumstances change. Suffering begins when the mind insists that these things should not have happened. Stoicism teaches that reality does not owe us comfort. It owes us only reality. When you accept this, resistance softens. You stop fighting what is already real. Instead of asking why life is unfair, you ask how to respond with dignity. Instead of demanding emotional safety from the world, you build emotional stability within yourself. Inner serenity is not achieved by avoiding difficulty. It is achieved by remaining inwardly undisturbed while facing it. The Stoic trains the mind to remain present, grounded, and rational even when emotions surge. This is not suppression. Suppression creates pressure. Detachment creates distance. When you detach emotionally, insults lose their sting because they reveal more about the speaker than about you. Loss becomes bearable because you understand that nothing external was ever guaranteed. Change becomes less frightening because you stop mistaking stability for permanence. Everything is temporary. Relationships, roles, success, even pain. Serenity comes from remembering this truth without bitterness. A Stoic does not cling. Clinging creates fear. They do not resist. Resistance creates frustration. They stand in the middle, balanced, aware that attachment to outcomes is the source of emotional chaos. When you want something too desperately, you give it power over you. When you release that desperation, you reclaim yourself. Emotional detachment also reshapes how you relate to others. You stop expecting people to act according to your values. You stop being shocked by selfishness, ignorance, or inconsistency, not because you approve of it, but because you understand human nature. This understanding creates patience. Patience creates peace. The Stoic understands that inner serenity is not a permanent state, but a practice. Every day, the mind is tested. Every day, emotions rise and fall. Serenity is not about never being disturbed. It is about returning to center more quickly each time you are disturbed, like a calm sea that may ripple on the surface, but remains deep and still below. One of the deepest Stoic realizations is that you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control the meaning you assign to it. Meaning shapes emotion. Emotion shapes behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. Emotional detachment breaks this chain at the very first link. When you no longer allow external events to dictate your inner state, life loses its power to destabilize you. You act with intention instead of impulse. You speak with clarity instead of reactivity. You move through challenges without losing yourself in them. This lesson is not about becoming indifferent to life. It is about becoming unshakable within it. Inner serenity is not numbness, it is freedom. Freedom from emotional slavery. Freedom from constant reaction. Freedom from the need for external validation. And once this freedom is tasted, it becomes impossible to forget. The world may remain loud, unpredictable, and demanding. But inside, there is quiet, there is order, there is strength. That is the gift of emotional detachment. That is the foundation of inner serenity. Lesson 4. Acceptance of fate. Amor fati. There comes a moment in life when resistance becomes heavier than pain itself. When the effort to fight reality drains more energy than the reality you are fighting. Stoicism names this moment clearly and without softness. Accept fate. Not with resignation, not with bitterness, but with understanding. This acceptance is called amor fati, the love of one's fate. Most people misunderstand acceptance. They believe it means giving up, becoming passive, or surrendering ambition. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Acceptance is not weakness. It is alignment. It is the decision to stop arguing with what has already happened and to focus instead on how you will meet what comes next. Everything that happens to you arrives through causes beyond your control. History, other people's choices, chance, nature, time. You did not choose these forces, yet you live inside them. Resistance to this truth creates frustration. Acceptance dissolves it. When you accept reality as it is, your mind stops wasting energy on denial, anger, and regret. Amor fati does not say, I tolerate what happens. It says, I embrace what happens as necessary. Even pain, even loss, even failure, not because they are pleasant, but because they are real. And reality, once accepted, becomes workable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything happens according to nature, and that nature does not make mistakes. This does not mean events are always kind or fair. It means they are inevitable outcomes of countless causes. When you understand this, blame loses meaning. Complaints feel childish. You begin to stand face to face with life instead of fighting shadows. Loving your fate does not mean loving suffering. It means refusing to let suffering become meaningless. Whatever happens becomes material for growth, discipline, and wisdom. The Stoic does not ask, why did this happen to me? That question has no answer that brings peace. Instead, they ask, how does this shape me, and what does this demand from me? Every obstacle carries instruction. Every loss removes illusion. Every disappointment reveals attachment. Fate is not an enemy. It is a teacher that does not speak, only acts. The Stoic learns by observing rather than resisting. Acceptance also brings an unexpected freedom. When you stop wishing the past were different, the present becomes lighter. You no longer drag regret behind you like a chain. You no longer rehearse alternate versions of life that never existed. You place both feet in reality and stand firmly there. This does not mean you stop striving. The Stoic works hard, acts with purpose, and pursues excellence. But they detach their identity from results. Success does not inflate them. Failure does not destroy them. Both are expressions of fate, and both are received with composure. There is deep peace in knowing that whatever happens could not have happened otherwise, that the moment you are in is the only moment that could exist. Resistance collapses under this understanding. Anxiety fades because the future is no longer something to fear. It is something to meet, prepared, and grounded. Amor fati also teaches gratitude. Not selective gratitude for pleasant moments, but complete gratitude for life as a whole. When you accept fate, you stop dividing experiences into good and bad and start seeing them as necessary. Even the hardest chapters shape the strongest character. The Stoic does not pray for an easier life. They train for a stronger mind. Fate will test you. It always does. The question is not whether difficulty will come, but whether you will meet it with bitterness or with strength. To love your fate is to stop running from life, to stop bargaining with reality, to stop asking for guarantees that were never promised. It is to say quietly and firmly, whatever comes, I will meet it fully. This lesson does not remove pain. It removes resistance. And in removing resistance, it removes unnecessary suffering. When you accept fate, life stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like a path. Sometimes steep, sometimes dark, but always forward. That is amor fati, not survival, not endurance, but agreement with life itself. Lesson 5. Memento mori, the power of remembering death. There is one truth that follows every human being silently, patiently, without exception. It does not threaten. It does not rush. It does not warn. It simply waits. Death. Stoicism does not hide from this truth. It turns toward it, calmly, clearly, without fear. This practice is called memento mori. Remember that you must die. Most people avoid thinking about death because it makes them uncomfortable. They distract themselves with noise, ambition, drama, and endless future plans. Stoics believed this avoidance is the root of wasted life. Not death itself, but forgetting death is what makes people careless with time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This was not meant to create fear or panic. It was meant to create urgency, clarity, and meaning. When you remember that your time is limited, illusions fall away. Trivial worries shrink. Ego loses its grip. Death is not the enemy of life. It is the frame that gives life value. Without an ending, nothing would matter. Choices would lose weight. Actions would lose meaning. Mortality sharpens attention. It forces you to ask the most important question. If this were my last day, would this still matter? The Stoic does not think of death as a tragedy. They think of it as nature's law. Everything that is born must pass. Stars collapse. Empires vanish. Bodies return to dust. You are not being singled out. You are participating in the same rhythm that governs the universe. Fear of death is often fear of unfinished business, unspoken truth, unlived potential. Stoicism teaches that the cure is not denial, but preparation. Live in such a way that death, whenever it comes, cannot accuse you of negligence. When you truly accept mortality, procrastination becomes irrational. Why delay kindness? Why postpone courage? Why waste years resenting people who will not matter in the end? Remembering death strips life down to what is essential. Memento mori also frees you from the fear of others' opinions. How small insults seem when measured against the certainty of death. How meaningless approval becomes when you realize everyone praising or judging you will also disappear. The Stoic asks, why trade my peace for the temporary noise of mortal minds? This awareness changes how you experience time. The present moment becomes sacred. Ordinary days stop feeling ordinary. Conversations deepen. Silence gains value. You stop rushing through life as if it were rehearsal. You understand. This is the performance. Stoicism teaches that death is not something that happens to life. It is something that completes it. Just as a sentence needs a full stop, life needs an ending. Without it, nothing would ever be whole. Remembering death also teaches humility. Your achievements, titles, wealth, and status will not follow you. This is not depressing. It is liberating. You no longer need to build monuments to your ego. You can focus on character instead of legacy. The Stoic goal is simple but demanding. Live each day so that if it were your last, nothing essential would be missing. Not perfection, but integrity. Not comfort, but courage. Not applause, but alignment with virtue. Death reminds you that time is not owned. It is borrowed. Every breath is a loan. Every morning is a gift without guarantee of renewal. When you live with this awareness, gratitude replaces entitlement. Memento mori is not about obsessing over death. It is about respecting life. It is about refusing to sleepwalk through days that will never return. It is about choosing depth over distraction. When you remember death, fear loses power. Loss becomes bearable. Hardship becomes temporary. You stop clinging so tightly to outcomes and start focusing on how you live right now. The Stoic does not wait for the right time to live well. They know that the right time is always now. Tomorrow is uncertain. Yesterday is gone. Only this moment is real. To remember death is to wake up, not to despair, not to panic, but to live deliberately. This is memento mori, the quiet discipline that teaches you how to truly live by never forgetting that you will one day die. Lesson 6. Freedom from external validation. Living without applause. Most people are not living their own lives. They are performing. Constantly. Silently. Desperately. They adjust their words, their opinions, their choices, even their dreams, based on how they might be perceived. Approval becomes their currency. Rejection becomes their fear. Stoicism exposes this quiet dependency and calls it what it is, a form of slavery. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This single line reveals the tragedy of external validation. When your self-worth depends on the reactions of others, your peace is always hostage. Praise inflates you. Criticism crushes you. Silence confuses you. The Stoic understands something most people never fully grasp. Other people's opinions are not facts. They are interpretations shaped by mood, bias, insecurity, ignorance, and circumstance. To build your identity on such unstable ground is to live on shifting sand. External validation is seductive because it feels like safety. Approval signals belonging. Praise feels like confirmation that you are on the right path. But Stoicism teaches that this comfort is temporary and unreliable. The same crowd that applauds today may condemn tomorrow. The same people who admire you in success may disappear in failure. To live for them is to accept permanent instability. The Stoic path is not about rejecting people or becoming arrogant. It is about relocating authority, moving it from outside voices to inner judgment. Your values, your principles, your character become the standard. You stop asking, "Do they approve?" and start asking, "Is this aligned with virtue?" This shift is not easy. The desire to be liked is deeply human. Evolution wired us to seek social acceptance for survival. Stoicism does not deny this impulse. It trains you to outgrow it, to recognize when the desire for approval is pulling you away from truth, courage, or self-respect. Consider how much energy is wasted managing impressions, explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, proving your worth to those who benefit from doubting it. The Stoic sees this as unnecessary exhaustion. You do not owe clarity to those who prefer confusion. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, you must be willing to be seen as foolish and wrong in the eyes of others. Growth often looks like rebellion to those comfortable with your old version. When you change, you threaten the expectations others placed on you. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Freedom from validation does not mean isolation. The Stoic still listens, still learns, still reflects, but they do not obey opinions blindly. Feedback is considered, not absorbed. Criticism is examined, not internalized. Praise is appreciated, not depended upon. There is immense power in becoming emotionally self-sufficient. When you no longer need applause to move forward, you become dangerous, not in aggression, but in independence. You can make difficult choices. You can walk alone. You can tell the truth without calculating reactions. Stoicism teaches that reputation is an external. Therefore, you can influence it, but you cannot control it. Chasing it guarantees anxiety. Releasing it creates calm. The Stoic prefers to be good rather than seen as good. This lesson also changes how you view rejection. Rejection stops feeling like a verdict on your worth and starts feeling like information. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone is qualified to judge you. Disapproval is not always a sign of error. Sometimes it is a sign of alignment. When you stop living for validation, your actions slow down and deepen. You speak less, but with intention. You choose quality over applause, integrity over popularity, peace over performance. The ultimate Stoic freedom is this: to act according to reason and virtue, regardless of who is watching. To live in such a way that even if misunderstood, misjudged, or ignored, your inner court remains clear. You do not need permission to live rightly. You do not need witnesses to be virtuous. You do not need applause to be whole. When approval no longer rules you, nothing can easily control you. This is the quiet power of Lesson 6, the freedom of living without applause, and discovering that inner peace is louder than any crowd. Lesson 7, discipline of daily practice. Becoming Stoic, not just learning Stoicism. Stoicism was never meant to be admired from a distance. It was designed to be lived. Read once, forgotten the next day. That was never the Stoic way. Marcus Aurelius did not write Meditations to inspire others. He wrote it to discipline himself. Stoicism begins when philosophy stops being information and starts becoming behavior. Most people consume wisdom the way they consume entertainment. They listen, they feel inspired, and then they return to old patterns. Stoicism rejects this cycle. It demands repetition, daily practice, quiet commitment, because the mind does not change through understanding alone. It changes through training. A Stoic understands that character is built the same way the body is built, through consistent, often uncomfortable effort. You do not become calm by wishing for calm. You become calm by practicing restraint when anger rises. You do not become fearless by reading about courage. You become fearless by choosing the right action while fear is present. Daily discipline in Stoicism is simple, but not easy. It begins each morning with intention. Before the world enters your mind, you remind yourself of what kind of person you aim to be. Patient, rational, just, unmoved by trivial things. You anticipate challenges not with anxiety, but with preparedness. You rehearse difficulty so that it does not shock you when it arrives. Marcus Aurelius practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining potential obstacles before they happened, not to suffer in advance, but to reduce surprise. When the mind has already accepted the possibility of loss, delay, insult, or failure, it meets them with composure instead of panic. Throughout the day, Stoic discipline appears in small moments. In the pause before reacting, in choosing silence over unnecessary argument, in letting go of the need to correct, impress, or dominate. These moments seem insignificant, but they compound. This is how inner strength is built, quietly, invisibly. Evening reflection is equally essential. The Stoic ends the day by reviewing it honestly. Where did I act with reason? Where did emotion overrule judgment? Where can I improve tomorrow? This is not self-punishment. It is self-responsibility. Improvement requires clarity, not shame. Stoicism teaches that discipline is a form of freedom. Without it, the mind is reactive, scattered, pulled in every direction by impulse and desire. With discipline, the mind becomes ordered, focused, self-directed. You stop being dragged through life and start walking through it deliberately. Importantly, Stoic discipline is not about perfection. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that failure was part of the process. What matters is returning to the path again and again. Consistency matters more than intensity. Progress matters more than pride. Over time, daily practice changes how life feels. Problems lose their sharp edges. Insults lose their sting. Delays lose their urgency. You develop what Stoics called apatheia. Not indifference, but emotional balance. You still feel, but you are no longer ruled by feeling. The disciplined Stoic becomes reliable to others, but more importantly, to themselves. Your word carries weight because you keep it. Your values remain steady because you reinforce them daily. This internal consistency creates a deep, quiet confidence that does not seek validation. Stoicism practiced daily becomes a way of seeing the world. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How should I respond to this?" Life stops being a series of reactions and becomes a series of choices. The ultimate goal of Stoic discipline is not withdrawal from life, but full engagement with it, without chaos, without inner noise, without self-betrayal. You do not wake up one day as a Stoic. You become one through practice, through repetition, through discipline. Lesson 7 teaches this truth clearly. Wisdom that is not practiced is decoration. Wisdom that is practiced becomes character, and character in Stoicism is everything. Lesson 8. Living according to nature. Aligning with purpose and the flow of life. Stoicism does not teach you how to escape life. It teaches you how to move with it. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a simple but demanding principle. Live according to nature. This does not mean living in forests or rejecting modern life. It means understanding reality as it is, not as you wish it to be, and aligning your thoughts, actions, and values with that reality. Most suffering comes from resistance, resisting change, resisting impermanence, resisting human nature, both in others and in ourselves. Stoicism teaches that peace begins when resistance ends, not resignation, but alignment. Nature is change. Nature is uncertainty. Nature is cycles of gain and loss, growth and decay. When you fight these truths, you exhaust yourself. When you accept them, you move with strength. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that he was part of a greater whole, not separate, not special, not exempt, just a rational being inside a vast ordered universe. This realization dissolves ego and replaces it with perspective. To live according to nature is to act in harmony with reason. Humans were given reason not for pleasure alone, but for virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. A Stoic measures success not by comfort or applause, but by alignment with these virtues. This lesson teaches you to stop asking, "What do I want right now?" and start asking, "What is the right thing to do in this moment?" Desire changes, circumstances shift, virtue remains stable. Living according to nature also means accepting your role. You are a parent, a worker, a friend, a citizen, a human being. Each role carries responsibility. Stoicism teaches excellence within your role, not escape from it. Do your duty fully, without resentment. Nature does not rush. It does not complain. It does not compare itself to others. The Stoic learns from this. You stop measuring your life against artificial timelines and social expectations. You move at the pace of growth, not pressure. This lesson also dissolves fear of the future. The future is not promised. Nature never guaranteed certainty. Planning is wise. Obsession is not. The Stoic prepares, but does not cling. Acts, but does not panic. When life delivers hardship, illness, loss, failure, the Stoic does not ask, "Why me?" Nature does not single you out. These experiences are part of the human contract. Acceptance does not weaken you. It steadies you. Living according to nature creates humility. You realize that control was always limited, that most outcomes were never yours to command. This humility is not defeat, it is relief. You begin to focus on what is always available to you, your character. When your actions align with nature and reason, inner conflict dissolves. You stop fighting yourself. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop betraying values for temporary comfort. Life becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer. This final lesson ties everything together. Perception, control, discipline, acceptance, detachment, practice. All lead here. Alignment. Stoicism does not promise happiness. It offers steadiness, not excitement, but peace. Not control over life, but control over yourself. To live according to nature is to live without inner resistance, to accept your place in the universe and act with excellence where you stand. This is the Stoic ideal. And with this, your journey completes, not as an ending, but as a beginning. Because Stoicism is not something you finish. It is something you live.